We've been hearing in the news a lot of euphoric announcements of democracy in the Arab world. What is more likely to take place is sort of the emergence of hybrid regimes, whereby military, security services, and nascent political parties jockey for advantage and position. And you have a kind of semi-chaotic emergence that's sort of a groping towards true modernity of a system that has authoritarian elements but also democratic elements. In other words, for an example, in Turkey for many years you had the military and civilians share power. The military controlled foreign and national security affairs. The civilians controlled the domestic economy and social issues and things like that. That's not that's not impossible for Egypt to emerge in this way. Egypt, though, has a bigger advantage than most other Arab states to emerge as a functioning democracy because it is a real age-old cluster of civilization, a Nile Valley civilization, which has engendered a real state with real institutions that may not function well, but there's a real political community there, so that the state itself is not in question. It's a question of who runs the state, how it functions. If you juxtapose it to a place like Yemen, for instance, where on a good day the government may control 75% of the territory, but not all of it, and it's riven by mountain ranges and different tribal alliances. Central control is much harder in Yemen than it is in Egypt. And therefore a place like Yemen, where Ali Abdullah Saleh to collapse, would probably have a far more chaotic political situation than Egypt. In other words, all these places are going to evolve differently. It all may look the same now. Youths demonstrating in the streets against the ruler leader, whoever he may be. But they're all going to end up slightly differently because of the nature of the states themselves, the various personalities. Some places will be more chaotic than others. Egypt and Tunisia may be the least chaotic. Places like Yemen and Libya were those regimes to encounter real difficulties would probably be the most chaotic because they're less states than they are geographical expressions without a strong state history behind them. Also, you're going to continue to have power politics play out in the Middle East. Power politics is not coming to an end. You're going to have an Iranian Shia regime that's acquiring nuclear weapons, essentially threatening not just Israel, but the Sunni Arab monarchs in the Arabian Peninsula. You're going to have various regimes in competition with each other. You're going to have Syria straddling alliances with Iran, facing off against other Arabs. I go into this a bit in a co-authored article that's just coming out in the National Interest entitled America Primed, which is about operationalizing hard power and grand strategy in the Middle East, in China, in Russia, in Europe, in the Anglosphere and elsewhere. Diplomacy in the Middle East is about to get much more complex. That's because instead of one man, one phone number, one email address in each country, we're now going to have a host of politicians and military officers jockeying for power and position. And it's not just going to be a question of what's the policy, it's going to be a question of who's in control and who do we really go to get this piece of business done. So policy is really about to get incredibly high maintenance from low maintenance. And that's one implication. The other implication is that the very diffusion of power in each Arab country is going to limit American influence in each Arab country, especially as Arabs are more likely to look not to the U.S. as a democratic model, but to look to closer by Islamic Turkey as a democratic model.